I started my first company when I was doing my PhD in NTU last time. My background is in science, right, and research. Behind the spirit of scientific research and entrepreneurship, I think I like to think that it's the same because you can draw a lot of parallels between the two. First of all, in scientific research, you're always coming up with new ideas, you're coming up with new experiments to conduct, and you're always discovering new things, you're breaking new frontiers, right? Or you're improving existing ideas to make it even better. One can say the same about entrepreneurship, and that's something that I've always held quite dearly. I do encourage my science juniors to consider entrepreneurship as well, because even in scientific research, right, we fail so often, right? We fail, we go back to our hypothesis, we reiterate. It's not too different from, say, a lean startup methodology, for example. You ideate, you validate with customers. If it doesn't work out, figure out what went wrong and go back to square one, and then in the cycle, right? So in that respect, I would say my background in science wouldn't be too different from entrepreneurship. So there are transferable skills and mindset that you can have between the two.
It wasn't because I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but it came along a side when I decided to be something that I wanted to be, which is a filmmaker. So yeah.
I was fortunate enough to actually try this out during my uni days. So before I started work, so I just tried out when I was in year 2 or year 3, I started off this whole thing to try whether it works or not. So it started off very slowly. It didn't have much of an impact. So slowly until when it reaches close to where I'm going to graduate at that time, the whole business actually went onto a platform that it has actually acquired recurring sales and everything. Yeah, so I decided, why not I just try it since I'm still young. I have nothing to lose. The most I only have maybe 2 years off, and then I'll go back again. I can still find a job equivalent to my peers. Yeah.
I really like teaching. Personally, I love to teach. I like to. It's not something which some people would profess that they know they want to be a teacher since young. I don't. I acquired it since uni days, and I learned it along the way when I was in uni giving private tuition, and I realized I liked it. So I say, why not just give doing what I like a chance? And obviously, I also know that to leave the job security. So what happened was during my MOE years, I just actually try and save as much as I could for rainy season, and I told myself that if I don't do it now, 10 years down the road, I probably will regret.
There were a lot that I wish, I always tell myself that I wish I knew what I know now, like 10 to 15 years ago. Actually, it's that in terms of skills, in the terms of filmmaking circle, is that there is a bigger world out there where we should go and network. The idea of international co-production where different producers from different countries, we come together and then we work together. Things like that were not taught in schools, you see. So that were some of the things that I learned. And one of the things that I learned as well is that I wish 10 years ago I can do differently, is that it's the mindset that sometimes it's like looking for opportunities. But what I feel to realize that when you're waiting for opportunities, right, it might take you too long. But what was interesting, what I realized is that you have to create the opportunities yourself.
There's a lot of lessons that I learned running my first company that allowed me to do better in my second. Some lessons cannot be conveyed through words. You actually have to live through it. But I guess one of the things that I did not know back then was this misconception that if you had a product, people will come to you. That's one. Secondly, is that you should start from talking to your potential customers first and understanding their needs before even building or creating something in the first place. I see this happening all the time. So for myself, I've gone into mentoring startups as well. I dedicate some of my time to help out to mentor young startups. I have also been judges and mentors in hackathons, right? So short challenges over 48 to 72 hours. The usual mistake is always not talking to users, not talking to customers, thinking what they want, building it, and then wondering why all these people that you build the things that you assume that they need do not want, right? So that's something that I wish I did better, because I didn't speak to my users and customers, right? I actually wasted 6 months of FML just like that. Those are 6 months that I'll never be able to get back. But yeah, there's no but. It was horrible. Yep. So that's a main advice that I give myself if I started out back then a couple of years ago. Other than that, find good people. It's always important to find good people, because ideas change, people don't. You have to spend a lot of investment just trying to upgrade people rather than the idea. So always start with a good team.
I wish that I could have started it earlier. On hindsight, probably could just set up my website earlier, or even set up base earlier, or say get to know more people earlier.
I think something that I would have known before I started Way Creative. Yeah, I think one thing which is important is all the government regulation. That's one thing I took quite a number of time to go and sort it out, especially human resource and stuff like that.
So one thing startup founders face, right, if they are coming in from a different vertical/domain, right? For example, myself, I was from science. I was motivated by personal experiences to start FML, but sometimes even then it's very hard to convey your motivation and expertise in convincing all stakeholders, right? Not just investors, but customers, but users as well. So you have to be able to connect with them very well. So however, I think back then when I was just starting out, right, I guess convincing wasn't my strong suit. Convincing wasn't my strong suit, which also led to it was challenging. It was challenging trying to figure out what people want or convincing them, so on and so forth. Another challenge was actually pitching, believe it or not, because I wasn't used to pitching. Not unlike, I came from a science background, right? So we're not exactly used to pitching things usually. This is in contrast with, say, business students, marketing students who have had years and semesters of experience just pitching things to people. So there's a bit of practice required. Took me a while to get that right, but once we got the messaging right, once we got our track record, validation from our customers, it became much easier to sell ourselves. Another challenge that we started initially, like I mentioned earlier, have to talk to customers, right? We initially wondered how come no one was using FML. We had to go through 3 different pivots before arriving at the final Q&A platform, believe it or not, simply because we didn't spend enough time talking to our potential customers and users.
I think startup phase, it was quite fun, to be frank, because everything is under your control. Yeah, so every client you just pay 101% attention to. Yeah, but slowly when you start to be a bit bigger, you will want to hire people to help you out with some stuff. For example, maybe design work or even some operation work. Yeah, so when doing the hiring phase, it has a lot of difficulty to find a genuine good person to hand over business to them or to task them to do some job itself. Yeah, because let's say, for example, we hire at $2,000, the quality of people might not be as good as you pay a bit higher. But to pay higher, it also affects your profit and loss. So the human hiring is one of the big issues that we have. Yeah, that's one thing. Yeah, then second thing is about because when I started doing printing, the profit margin is not a lot. Yeah, it's more of the customer coordination that makes it to what we are today. Yeah, so from there till now, our main philosophy is always about credibility. It's always about customer service, which we actually imparted to all our staff to make sure that they abide to that also. One thing also is because of how the economy changed us. When you start off printing, I mean, there's so much only printing can do, to be frank. Then slowly we actually venture into like customer service. So we thought like, whatever the customer wants, we will try to find for them as a one-stop service. So slowly we acquire more things, like we will do into carpentry, we do into metalwork, we even venture into like visual merchandising, all these aspects. Yeah, so that to actually give a customer a one-stop service. So if let's say he wants us marketing stuff, from end to end, we will service them from designing of flyers to conceptualizing of marketing concept, slowly moving on to the actual execution, or even towards the process where you have to fabricate things to make up for your event itself. Yeah, or even you need premium sourcing, we also do it for you. Yeah, so that's why we thought of to do a one-stop solution for everybody. And then from there, we learn a lot from there, and then we try to spread into different aspects also.
Obviously, okay, I started off with 2 students my first year. I only had 2 students. So basically, all my J2 students just graduated. Like, the year I married, right, I had a lot of J2 students, and my J1 students, I only had 2. So when I started off with 2, so that was actually quite nerve-wracking. That was a difficult part. I think growing from 2 to 10 students take quite a while. Building up, yes, that's the difficult part.
Running a startup doesn't mean you have to build tech products all the time. The reason I say this is because I see a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, right? What they do is they go around asking, go around looking, finding people who can code, whereas they themselves cannot code. I find this problematic on two major reasons. First reason, if you focus on building, you're going to neglect what makes the business most important, your customers, right? Always have your users and customers at the forefront of your mind and not the product. You're selling benefits, you're selling the solution to solving your customers' pain points, you're not selling features of your website. It's a very common error that I see as well. Whenever I see aspiring entrepreneurs come up to me, they pitch, oh, I got this chatbot, it can do all kinds of chatting, and I'm like, okay, but what kind of pain points does it solve? That's one, don't build. Secondly, try to learn a bit of coding yourself so that you can communicate better with whoever's going to build your product next time. I've actually written extensively on this, the importance of not building yet. The reason for that is because if you aspiring entrepreneurs out there, right, try to learn some code. Even if you learn coding, you don't build, at least you can communicate better eventually with whoever's going to build your tech. Because firstly, you're going to prevent yourself from getting scammed if you're going for coding houses, right? You can also, if you get your own tech co-founder, at least you're on the same page as your tech co-founder. Many often times you have the business co-founders overworking the tech co-founder and taking them for granted. For example, it leads to poor team dynamics, it leads to just things falling apart. Consider developing solutions to help people within your domain expertise. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you look at statistics and reports, right, on startup founders, typically the successful ones, right, those in their 30s, basically they've worked for 5 to 10 years, right, and they've developed deep domain expertise within their field, and that's why they can come up with amazing solutions to pain points in the industry. Of course, if you are a bright-eyed, fresh-faced graduate from uni, or if you're a student entrepreneur, then the kinds of problems that you tackle will be different from the ones who start out much later in their lives. So another thing that I probably should mention, but it's kind of hard to execute, is know exactly what your strengths and weaknesses are. I guess that kind of awareness doesn't come until you sit down and meditate and the reason for that is because most of the time, right, in a startup, the only things you can rely on is yourself. It really depends on how you utilize your strengths. Myself, I'm good at strategizing. I'm good at utilizing excess capacity in things that are not used, for example. I'm good at picking things up quickly, which also means I'm a jackie of all trades, which also means that I'm able to pull different things together in a more cohesive manner. My co-founder, my current co-founder, she's good partnerships, which is why I've made her kind of like a single focus is to work on partnerships and plug UpLevel in very specific parts of the data science training ecosystem, for example. If you try to diversify your skills too much, it will be tough. I'm not saying it's impossible, it's just it's gonna take a lot more out of you. And you should be taking all that time and energy that you have into focusing in very specific areas. So three major advice, I guess. First advice, make sure you're technically competent. You don't need to code, right? You just need to know your shit enough to not get to know what works and what doesn't, to be able to communicate better with your technical team. Okay, but an extension to point number one is also, if you don't need to build, don't build. Unless you're going for some hardcore B2B enterprise sales, then you have no choice but to build. And even then, you should be getting letters of interest and not like building it first and then looking for your B2B customers. B2C solutions tend to be much easier because all you need is typically some Facebook ads and a landing page to gather interest, usually, right? Point number two, make sure you talk to your customers, right? Make sure you know your shit, basically. Last one, know your strengths and weaknesses. It might send you down on a spiral, but your existential spiral, right? You sit down, you ask yourself what you're good at. That's a question that you'll be asking yourself at various stages of your life as you go through different challenges, be it within your startup or without, right? In school and whatnot, or in work. It's important to identify those things. Knowing yourself will take you very far, basically.
Personally, for me, I feel that skill, it's always is a discipline that you can always pursue on your own. I think a lot of times in the industry, we always focus on skill, that we always lose the priorities on other things like managing things. And in fact, I had one period of time I was wishing that I was hoping that the media school that I went to, they teach us the basics of business. Because at the end of the day, no matter how good you are, if you don't sell yourself, you're not going anywhere. So that was what I realized. I hope it's not too late for me to do something about it. But for those who want to start, remember is that no matter how good you are, can't sell or market yourself, you are at a very tight space, I would say. So unless you find someone who can market for you, or you have to do the marketing yourself. Yeah.
Inevitably, I think in any kind of business that you're doing or any kind of like things that you're going to start up, you definitely would have to face failure, but you just can't change that lah. There's no way around it. I would say know yourself. That is the most important thing. So know yourself. Whether know your competency, that's very important. Like I knew that I wouldn't die, I wouldn't go hungry because students like me. I like to teach. I really do genuinely care for my students. So that is one. And I work really hard. Imagine I go to school in the morning, then after school I'll have all my CCA and stuff. Then I have dinner. Then I'll go for tuition and I practically just reach home like at 10 p.m. every day. And weekend is even worse, right? We have a church and stuff like that. So I just operated like that for like good 3-4 years. So you have to know you have to know yourself. That's why, like, if you're not that kind that would want to work like that, like if you really treasure your family time and your what else, your quality time with your kids and your parents and whatnot, or your friends, then maybe it's not so good for you. But if you really you know that you're up for it, right? Then just by all means, man. I mean, you just have to be very hardworking and to be lucky, right? Like you just keep hitting the you just keep working so hard, right? That you just eventually be lucky. That's the law of probability, like the law of averages. Just keep working. That's what I believe. Apart from knowing yourself, apart from like acquiring customer and all, like I think one of the problem is you need to know your competitors and you need to know what are the value that you bring to the marketplace in general. I think value creation is one thing. For me, when the students take into my lesson, right, for 2 hours, I need to make sure that the value that they see in the class, right, is tangible. It's so much that it's overflowing, right, that they know, hey, heck, I can't get any better lessons, math lesson for 2 hours than anywhere else. So that will only come from, experimenting and tweaking and really like, put in effort into ensuring that will happen. So that there are many ways you can work around it, right? So I think value, to me, for the students to feel the value tangibly, that's something which I really care about. So be like the ambience in the classroom or like the lightings. If it's too dim, students will get very tired in the class and very drowsy. So things like that, like minor things like that, which to me is very important. So you need to decide for yourself what are the valuable things that your clients or your customers are looking for. So that's something which I learned. So at the startup phase, you sort of have to like figure it out. Like the best is to look at your competition, like, but don't make your competitors your like your main focus. Sometimes you lose track, right? So I tend to see my competitors as someone who make me a better teacher, tutor, I guess.
I think starting a own business is fairly easy based on current context. But I think one thing you have to know is that you must have an understanding about your revenue first. Yeah, no matter how good your idea is, right? If you have no understanding about your stream of revenue, right, it doesn't make a complete business. It just become an idea only. Yeah, so a source of revenue is very important. The rest of the stuff, when you start off, I think all this can be sorted out internally, or when you do hiring. I think all this you will learn along the way. But main importantly, for a business to survive and to stay long, is that the stream of revenue must be there. That's what I think.
I think I come emphasize this, figure out who's gonna pay for your product. If you're gonna come up with an idea that requires a huge user base first before you can monetize them, it's gonna be tough.